Diane, thank you for joining me on this series that we're hosting on transformation. I really wanted to zero in on transformation in the continent. And that was actually inspired by my visit to Rwanda a few months back. I was super impressed by what you guys are doing, but also how it's acting as a beacon for Africa as a whole. So I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you.
And one of the things I want to start off with, knowing your background, knowing your career trajectory, is maybe let's debunk a few things first. What is one assumption about Africa's future that you fundamentally disagree with?
Thank you for having me, Peter. It's a great pleasure to share some insights with you. I think one assumption, it's actually a very optimistic assumption, is that Africa can bypass the old path for development and leapfrog using new technologies, etc. And they'll cite examples of drones logistics in Rwanda, which is something, there's been a lot of PR around that. Yeah. Mobile banking in Kenya, in East Africa generally. And they argue that probably we won't need, or we could be able to avoid massive investments in infrastructure. But I don't think it's possible. I don't think there's a shortcut to transformation. And I think the risk for us would be that we have access to these emerging technologies, but it doesn't result into broad-based prosperity. We have some heavy lifting to do around infrastructure, literacy, including digital literacy. I don't think you can leapfrog your way into prosperity with people who are not literate. So I think there's a lot of heavy lifting that we need to do in building capabilities, in building human capital. And that's something that we have to work on. And I've seen it in my journey. You do not just expect to buy technology and implement. Yeah. You really need transformation to come from the people.
It's interesting you say that. When I think about a capability, right, I always say to people-centric capability starts first with people, right?
Absolutely.
And a capability is people first, then you put technology, then you put process,
100%.
Then you put governance, then you put all these other enablers. But if you forget the core, which is people first, then you miss the essence of building the capability muscle. Now, I remember one of our previous panels that we did at the IFF was Rwanda's literacy rate. Rwanda now has a literacy rate just under 80%, second only to Kenya in East Africa. But what is more impressive is that Rwanda recorded the largest improvement in literacy on the continent since 2000, roughly 30 percentage points. This reflects decades of sustained investments in education and human capital, going back to that sort of building the capability, a people-centric capability. Now, this is a country that many people said 30 plus years ago had no future. And to see where you are today is super transformational. Now, when you reflect on that journey as a Rwandan, as a business leader, witnessing that transformation, how does it shape your own sense of responsibility and how does it shape your leadership as well?
Oh, good question, Peter. Maybe I'll start with probably stating what I believe was the most profound mindset shift that enabled the transformation that you talked about. I think the first one is that as a nation, we refused to be defined by the failures of the past, including the genocide against the Tutsis. And something also very important is the ownership of our own journey. We stopped to think or to experience transformation or development as something that is owed to us or done to us by other people. But really, reconstruction was our own responsibility. Development has to be done by us, on our own terms, anchored in our cultural values, and limited by our own ambitions. So that's very fundamental. And because of that, there's this unity of purpose. Everyone believes it's up to us. We can do whatever we want to do.
Right.
And this has really transformed this country. And I see that every day in my job, in my responsibilities. When you're able to agree with people that you can do something, you actually achieve that. The biggest lesson I'm learning every day is that with a team of people who are committed, who share the same ambition, you can achieve anything. And that's very profound, something that has defined Rwanda in the past 30 years.
So let's zero in on, I like the point about sense of ownership, responsibility. I say this to my daughter all the time, right? Don't let somebody tell you what you can't do just because they can't do it themselves. Do it for yourself, because that's what defines a leader. Now, let's zero in on your role at the Bank of Kigali. So you recently celebrated 60 years. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Was this a moment of reflection for you as a CEO?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a big milestone that we celebrate the whole of this year at the bank, and we have many moments to celebrate. And it's also a time to reflect on the legacy of trust, customer loyalty that we've seen. But most importantly, and what I keep telling my colleagues, is we need to reflect on our contribution to national building, which I believe is critical and defines us as Bank of Kigali. So as we celebrate, we also need to look ahead and recommit to innovation, to inclusivity. I think that's important. But most importantly, to future resilience. Because as an organization, we survived the genocide against the Tutsis. We've survived many shocks after. And it seems to me that the frequency of shocks is actually increasing.
I mean, look what we've had since COVID.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous, right?
Absolutely. So resilience has to be built in everything we do. The people side, the technology, processes, everything. And we need to still be here. Probably we won't be alive, but the banks should be here in 60 years and reflect on things we are building today that have made the bank more resilient.
But how do you measure that on a day-to-day basis in your organization? How do you effectively, as a leader, put measures on that to make sure that it's going in the right direction and you're building that resilience?
We want to make sure people, it's not about people, individuals. It's about systems. It's about everything is well institutionalized. And as a leader, I keep telling my colleagues that I don't do much. My job is to make them succeed, because if they succeed, I succeed. I really find myself as someone who has an orchestra, trying to make sure people talk to each other, reminding people, did you check with that person, etc. And beyond people, I want to see ideas originating from teams, from everyone. I want to see execution happening without me having to tell them what to do.
Autonomy,
Ideas,
right?
Yes, ideas have to be born within the system, and projects have to be implemented without me knowing or me approving. And that to me is resilience. Of course, technology resilience is important. We need to be able to run every day, including in case of a big crisis. We've done that through COVID. We've been able to survive. And today, every deployment that we make in our technology, we need to make sure it runs from the cloud, from on-premise infrastructure, and we need to be able to seamlessly move from one side to another without even the customer knowing what is happening. So that's technology resilience. But generally, resilience is cultural. It's not about things you do. It's about how you do things on an everyday basis. And sometimes you can't even point to specific things that you do. But it's just how business is done. We should not stop business because someone is unwell or is sick or has left the bank, which happens all the time. We talk of bankers as it's like musical chairs. People move from one bank to another, but business and clients should continue to be served. So that's how we do business on a daily basis. And it has to be ingrained in people. It's not about what they do. It's not about themselves. But it's about how we deliver to our clients and our stakeholders at large.
I love what you said about cultural resilience. I think that's a great lens for business leaders to think about building resilience, because a lot of times we only think about the hard stuff, but actually the culture element is just as critical.